Today we're going to be looking at Catherine Brownstein, OpenAI version 01 and genetics. Basically what we're looking at here, it will be explained in the video, but we're learning about how AI can help us determine whether or not certain genetic sequences play a role in disease. Of course, you guys hopefully know my view on this at this point in time. If not, we'll expand on that in the video. Obviously, I don't believe that genetics are the underlying cause of any disease. Even in the case of birth defects, these may manifest as genetic anomalies. However, unfortunately, this is a hard pill to swallow, but it's a harsh truth, but it's really important that we accept this truth to be able to heal properly and realize what's going on. It is the health of the parents that determines birth defects. Anything that occurs at birth, I would consider a birth defect. Anything that occurs after birth, things like autoimmune disease, things of that nature that we blame on genetics, even things like schizophrenia, heart disease, all of these other phenomenon, risk for cancer, these have nothing to do with your genetics. They have everything to do with your environment. We're starting to understand this more and more through epigenetics, but for some reason, the geneticists just love that old saying, it's a complex interaction between our genes and our environment. But again, these are unscientific claims, absolute nonsense. So let's get into the video and delve a little bit more into this.
It's impossible to be an expert in every single gene. There's 20,000 genes. Like, you can't keep everything straight, but AI can. My name is Catherine Brownstein. I'm a geneticist here at Boston Children's Hospital. I'm also scientific director of the Manton Center for Orphan Disease Research. I deal with the N of 1 cases where no one has seen that presentation before.
N of 1 cases. This is a really important point. If we know anything about science, and you know, ever scientist, they will say that N of 1 experiments are nonsense and they are unscientific and they are statistically irrelevant. A huge contradiction here. For some reason, we still consider genetics, and especially her field, a science, an empirical one at that, even though no statistical methods can be employed. I think that's a huge oversight, and I think it's completely hypocritical of genetics, and it shouldn't be considered a science, especially this field of it.
Patients don't know what's going on. They're really medical refugees in some way.
And I do really feel bad for these individuals too, trying to seek answers and, genetics, and it's a scapegoat at this point. If we don't know the cause of something, now we just slap on the fact that it has something to do with our genetics. And something that's really important to note is that geneticists love the word association. This genetic sequence is associated with this disease. Because really there's no empirical proof or proof whatsoever that genes cause diseases. And that's why there's this caveat of the complex interplay between our genes and our environment, because healthy individuals can have genes, which we identify as being disease causing, and be extremely healthy and have no problem at all. Obviously, this begs the question of whether or not our genetic methods are satisfactory and actually useful and determine something in our realm. But aside from that, it's a direct falsification of a gene being a causal factor. Again, some people don't have these disease-causing genetic sequences and still develop the diseases said to be caused by them. A huge problem, obviously very unscientific, and if we took a true Popperian stance in empiricism, it would be a falsification.
It's like wing walking. Like, you're seeing things and you're seeing genetic things, you're seeing phenotypic things, and you're trying to connect them, and none of it's been seen before, but you think you are the only one in the world, but really sometimes there's a whole community. They just haven't come together yet. When before I would look up an article and then look up another article and then look up another article. Chat with reasoning is so much easier to use. It's just a quick prompt to summarize it for me. and then summarize this part for me. I mean, it's just way, way faster. This is a case of excruciating pain in their bladder. We can't figure out why. So I can go here and say, can you tell me about citrate synthase? And it tells me that it is expressed in the bladder and it could potentially be related to bladder health. So
it could potentially be related based on ChatGPT. Now, here's the thing about AI, and here's why this is scary to me, because AI intelligence pulls from databases. This is obvious. These databases are obviously biased by those who create the database, especially in the field of science. Now, essentially, this AI with reasoning, whatever that means, I think that's just nonsense because you're pulling from databases, right? And these databases are full of information that humans put into it. The only reason that AI seems more intelligent is because it can pull from these databases, which are comprehensive. Now, the comprehensive databases are still based off human input. So, if the current scientific consensus is incorrect, downstream of that is the databases, and downstream of that is our AI. Not to say that the logic and the computational skills of AI is bad per se or not helpful. It obviously can be very helpful, but it's really important to know that, AI is completely based off our human understanding. It is not more intelligent than the human race. It is built by the human race, and it's theory-laden. You guys might know this from Thomas Kuhn. I believe Karl Popper spoke about it as well. Theory-ladenness is the problem with empiricism, and it's that observations and obviously inductions are theory-laden. They are based on the worldviews of the individuals conducting the observation or induction. That means all of our preconceived notions can influence our observations. They influence our inductions, the stories told about the data, and it makes it a completely biased and subjective endeavor. That's why Karl Popper proposed the falsification to remove the theory-ladenness in empiricism, because that was the only pure way to determine of whether or not something was false, right? You can't necessarily prove something true with empiricism. You just technically get closer and closer to the truth, which they love to say. And there might be an area where positive claims are possible in empiricism, but it's very, very difficult with induction. It's a poor way of reasoning, and it can be very corrosive and harmful, especially with the stories that we tell being based on our preconceived notions. We kind of just keep building and building off of our worldview and our theories that we already have. And often theories come first, data come after, right? So we kind of decide the direction we want to go before we actually prove anything empirically, in quotations, of course.
Decrease citrate synthase activity. Oh, this is really smart because I don't know from this variant if it's like knocking down activity or causing too much activity. It's actually really hard to figure that out sometimes. And so it gives both options. So I can think about both ways that it could be going. That's actually really cool.
Okay, another really important point. So we're all downstream in this reasoning right now. There may be citrate, I forget the name of the enzyme. There may be an increase or a decrease in the bladder that is causing the pain in the bladder. Now, what the geneticist will claim is that this is due to some sort of signal nucleotide polymorphism, an SNP, an alteration in the genetic sequence. They'll claim that, through random mutation, that this occurs. Now, a pure epigeneticist would likely say that there was an environmental factor which changed the expression of the gene, causing this to be upregulated or downregulated, which would align more with this true understanding of our environments internally and externally. Our internal environments adapt to our external environments. That is 100% true. That is what we absolutely know is true. The important point to stress here is that this is all downstream. There is a cause higher up, right? And so the temporary allopathic fix would be if you have increased enzyme in your bladder causing this pain, then we need to decrease that enzyme in the bladder. What we understand in the terrain movement is that an increase in an enzyme, right? This begs a lot of questions here, but say there is an increase in an enzyme in the bladder, we understand that there's a reason for that increase of the enzyme. Perhaps it's breaking down some sort of metabolite that is toxic to the bladder, and it may be resulting in pain. Obviously, pain being a signal needing rest. From Germanic medicine, it may be healing some sort of conflict. There are many ways to interpret why that pain is occurring, but the reality of the situation is that increases in biochemistry or decreases in biochemistry, uh, whatever it may be, is always in response to a stressor, right? So there's always a stressor. And the field of epigenetics is really, really interesting. And I think it's downplayed completely. Basically, what they'll say now is that there's a complex interplay between our genes and the environment. And really, again, this is just complete nonsense. It's a terrible statement to make. It's backed by absolutely no evidence. It's basically just a way to continue using the genetics as a scapegoat. But we know that it's in response to a stressor, whether it be an environmental toxin, a deficiency, a psychological trauma, physical trauma, whatever it may be. These are the root causes of illnesses and diseases in general. Diseases, or we could just say diseased states, our body trying to heal itself. So we're completely downstream. We are not looking at the root cause. As Mark Bailey would say, we're not looking upstream for the root cause. And AI can't help us with this because our genetics textbooks, our genetic database, our theories that we have that influence the thinking of these AI models is all based on this idea that, the increase in this enzyme or the decrease in this enzyme is the cause of the pain, right? But and a geneticist will say, well, it's actually the genetic sequence that's being expressed, and they will go back to this idiotic idea of mutagenesis, these random mutations occurring in our body, causing disease randomly as the scapegoat, so we do not need to take responsibility for our health, and we can continue playing the victim mindset.
I go down a lot of rabbit holes that do not yield anything useful. And being able to increase the percentage of rabbit hole to useful information is killer. There's a level of obsession that all of us have. I think we also have the cases that keep us up at night where, we really can't figure out why we can't figure it out. No case is ever closed.
Yeah, well, that is the hymn of empiricism. No case is ever closed, no theory is ever proven nor falsified. Digress. Uh, Essentially, our understanding of the role of AI in genetics is that it's only helpful in this case for decreasing the amount of unhelpful rabbit holes and sort of increasing the helpful rabbit holes. All these rabbit holes are just holes that other scientists have dug. They actually have no rabbit in them whatsoever. There is no root cause in them. Our theories don't allow us to see this. Our frameworks don't allow us to see this. The consensus doesn't allow us to see this. Our victim mindset, I think, at the root is what doesn't allow us to see this here. And that's a big problem. We're avoiding responsibility at all costs. We need to have our scapegoats because, pharma won't be able to operate if we don't have these scapegoats of random illness. And genetics is just the newest scapegoat. We've had germs for a long time. Now with all these chronic illnesses that have just arisen, and I would say obviously caused by environmental factors, you know, we have the genetic scapegoat now of, oh, it's now hereditary. It's caused by random mutations in our genes. You having some sort of chronic kidney disease is just not your fault. Having chronic liver disease is not because of any sort of toxin that you've been ingesting your entire life. It's just an absurd thing. We can touch more on single nucleotide polymorphisms in a future episode. Go check out Emrys Goldsworthy's podcast. We did a podcast together. We kind of touched on it a little bit more. I'll make a more concise video on it in the future. And the last point that I want to make is AI and in theory-ladenness. I think I want to expand on this topic a little bit more, but it's really important to note that AI cannot expand beyond the database that we give it. It cannot expand beyond the goalposts that are determined by our data. If we have determined the field of genetics, AI is going to take that as gospel, and it is going to take it very, very seriously. And the logic is good, I think, in AI. I think the logical systems are sound. But using logic on unfounded claims leads to nowhere. Claims that are made about our reality that truly have no evidence leads to absolutely nowhere, and it's redundant and it's useless and it's obviously very corrosive because the opportunity cost of healing is large. So I don't fear AI whatsoever. It cannot expand beyond the databases. Um, it's kind of a different argument there, but maybe we'll expand on that more if you guys are interested in that. So let me know where you want me to take this. I definitely want to do a theory-ladenness and AI video. I can expand more on genetics as well. I know that's kind of a hot topic, but go and read any genetics paper. The terminology used is kind of self-deprecating, which I find really funny and interesting. But if you guys enjoyed this video, give us a like, share, comment, subscribe. That really helps us out. Keep the channel going, keep it growing. Appreciate you guys for checking it out. I think we might have hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm not sure by the time this video is out, so we're going to give that book away, Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And I promise to give another book away at the 2,000 subscriber mark. So leave a comment and tell me which book you want me to give away. Let's not make it a, Black's Law or anything like that. So let's keep her reasonable, but let me know which one you want me to give you away and we can work that out. All right, guys. Thanks for listening and take care.